"Good evening, ladies and gentlemen," the grumpy old lizard said, catching the attention of the crowds. "My name is Colt Lint. I am the head of the Slaver Guild Eastern Branch," the old lizard continued. "I know some of you are wondering on why this briefing is necessary. After all, everyone in this room is an expert on this." Colt picked his nose. "But I assure you this briefing is necessary, and I advise everyone to listen to the end for your own... Oh, and there he goes." Colt sighed. One of the lizards from the back had just stormed outside, leaving the room speechless. "Well, it's his loss," Colt snorted. "The reason for this briefing is because the situation here is completely different from the other part of the guild. There is a new race from the Borkas continent, and the Senate has classified them as Telt, which means they are of equal status to us," Colt informed, causing several loud gasps in the crowd. "The new race is called the Humans, and they came from another world." The audience started to whisper among each other. A new Telt race? And they came from another world? For some of you, this isn't old news, but for people who rarely or never step foot on this continent, this might come as a surprise. Colt continued his announcement, ignoring the murmur from the audience. They look eerily similar to the felines, except the humans are furless and have no claws nor tail. They are also significantly much slower and weaker than your average felines. But the most important thing about the humans is not their similarity with the felines, nor is it about the fact that they come from another world, but it is their culture. The humans are heavily against slavery. The crowd became rowdy. "How could the humans be classified as Telt if they hated slavery?" one of the lizards commented, and the other lizards agreed. "Not only are the humans heavily against slavery, some of them believe that slavery is so immoral that they have attacked several slaves' establishments in the Borkas continent, letting the slaves free, or forcing the people there to employ the slaves as common workers. They also do not believe in the concept of race hierarchy, and believe that every race is equal and even consider the feline as their close ally." The crowd went nuts hearing that. "A new race from another world that looks like and even allied with the inferior felines, who hated slavery, and they were classified as Telt?" the audience thought. "I know what you are all thinking, but the Senate word is final." Colt tried to calm the crowd. "We do not know how many humans are there on the continent, but we know that they mostly live along the trade route. This is why all of you need to learn about the type of human settlements. The guild has classified human settlements into 4 types. The first type is... How long do you think this travel will take?" Count Porky asked his aide. "Probably around 2 months, my lord," one of his guards answered. 2 months? Well, at least we have enough supplies. But let's hope those slaves survive when we arrive at the Lurk Kingdom. Dead slaves are useless after all," Count Porky mused. "We could arrive even earlier if the guild didn't stop us back there," Count Porky complained. "They made me wait for hours only to lead us to some briefing. Can you believe it?" he spat. "So how long until we reach another settlement?" Count Porky asked his aide. "In around 20 minutes. We will reach a human settlement called the town of Salem," the aide answered. "A human town? Bloody hell! We should have gone to the south back in the port." "This route has the least amount of human settlements in its path, my lord." Count Porky stared at his aide with confusion. "This route has the least amount of human settlements? These bastards are everywhere!" Count Porky sighed and glanced back at the trail of wagons behind his carriage. The wagons are filled with slaves, both felines and volps. Before those bastards came, a slaver could sell around half a wagon of slaves for each city. But now, he had passed over 3 towns and only sold 1 or 2 slaves. "Look!" One of the guards pointed to the horizon, a large wall span from the edge of the forest to the side of a river. "It seems we are close, my lord." The Count nodded, and they continued. The Count, with his wagons of slaves and entourage, entered the border checkpoint. Several of the humans' border guards stared at them as they went through. The Count sat at his carriage while his aide dealt with the paperwork. The Count looked outside and saw border guards watching his slave wagons with pity and anger. Bunch of weaklings, the Count thought to himself. After what felt like an eternity, they were finally let through. They entered the town and were immediately greeted by hundreds of tall brick houses. Nobody knows why, but humans seem to really love tall buildings. He heard a rumor that back in the humans' world, they had buildings as tall as a mountain. He had no way to check that claim, and he was pretty sure the claim was a complete bullcrap. As they continued along the main road, all the while being stared at by everyone they passed, a lone human approached them. The lone human wore a robe with a strange mark, 2 lines crossing each other, with the vertical line taller than the horizontal. May the blessing of the divine fall upon all of us. I am Father Amos, and I have come to bargain, the human said. A human who wanted to buy these slaves? Interesting, the Count thought to himself. 300 silvers for the feline and 450 silvers for the vulpes, the Count replied. The price he suggested was quite expensive, but he hadn't sold any slaves that day. He had expected the human to reply in anger or complaint. Perhaps he will try to haggle for a lower price. Instead, the human walked up to him and paid the full price. I want 5 from that cart. The human pointed at one of his carriages, which was filled with damaged slaves. The Count scratched his back in confusion. Why would the human want to pay full price for an entire carriage filled with useless slaves? The Count ordered his guard to pick 5 slaves from that specific carriage. His guard followed his order and threw the 5 slaves to the ground. One of the pregnant trash struggled from his guard's grasp and tried to escape, but the idiot was kicked to the ground like the others. The Count looked back at the man and saw his face distorted in disgust. If you want, I could switch them. Those are the garbage that is about to die anyway, so... No, the human replied. Before the Count could respond, another human came. Unlike the other human, this human wore a thin and long brown robe. Peace be upon you. I am Ahmed, and I would like to buy 7, the strange human shouted. The human called Father Amos looked at Ahmed begrudgingly. The Count rubbed his back again, as he felt a tension brewing. The 2 human looked like as they were competing with each other. But why? Father Amos turned to him again. I would like to revise my purchase. I want to buy 10. 12? A shout came from behind him. The Count turned to see a bald man in an orange robe rushing toward him. I don't have much, but I would like to free one of those poor slaves. Another human approached him. These humans really love slaves, huh? Maybe that's why no one would be by... Wait, did he just say free? Count Porky stopped his train of thought and looked at the slaves the humans had brought. The slaves were surrounded by humans from all sides, bringing them foods and drinks. Some began unlocking the shackles on their arm and neck. Count Porky smirked. The first type is the blue type. A blue type settlement is the friendliest towards slavery, at least by human standards. They will let slavers pass their town or city. However, they will try to buy your slaves to be freed. If you no longer wanted your slaves, a blue type city would be the best place to visit. However, they will always free their slaves no matter what. If you do not want your abomination to be free, it is better to sell them elsewhere. Of course, killing unwanted slaves would be much easier, but if you could gain money from it, why not? This town is truly the best, Count Porky laughed to himself. He took another sip from his ale, a taste of victory. You are finished too? A lizard beside him asked. Finished? The Count asked. Finished. Selling all your slaves, I mean, he replied. Oh, that, the Count chuckled. I still have some that I wouldn't let go. And I also need 100 minimum for the King Falos of the Lorette Kingdom, he answered. I see. For me, I have sold every one of my slaves. I plan to retire soon. The Count chuckled. Why would you want to retire at this time, my friend? When there is this much eager buy... Don't, he interrupted. If you do want to continue, I recommend you treat your slaves better before selling them." The Count laughed. "Why? The more trash they are, the more likely the humans will buy them." "Still, I know why you want me to stop. I also don't think those abominations should be free, but we could just capture them back again if we are lucky. Imagine the money!" the Count boasted. "But the humans will know," he said. "And? What are they going to do?" The lizard sighed before leaving. "Hey, where are you going?" the Count shouted. The Count spat on the ground before continuing his drink. He noticed a strange human on the corner of the bar talking to a box. Bunch of lunatics. After a while, the Count returned back to his room. The Count had a very good sleep that night. The next day, when he and his caravan left the city, coming out a couple times richer than when they came in, they passed around some more towns and villages, and just like back at the port, almost no one brought their slaves. They saw another large wall in the distance, with several weird structures near the walls, one of them being a large grey cubicle building. Yep, definitely a human settlement. They approached the border, and one of the border guards ran toward them. "Stop! Any slaver that trespasses the border will be killed." "Well then, how do we pass? We need to go to the Lurep Kingdom, and we do not have much time." "Just go to the left, and after you pass a human village, go to the right, and you will arrive at the main road," the border guard replied, before spitting on the ground and walking back to his post. "Arrogant bastards!" The Count slammed his palm against the wall of the carriage. Maybe when he arrived at the Lurep Kingdom, he should ask the king there if they could try to subdue, no, conquer these little A yellow-type human settlement would force you to employ your slaves. If you have one or two personal slaves, then maybe this is fine, but for others, no. If you encounter this type of settlement, it is best to just go around. The same goes for an orange-type settlement, as they would straight-up kill you if you pass their territory. "Telltale my ass! Have you seen the way they look? You call that race a telltale? Cynic goes insane, and now all of us need to My lord!" a guard shouted from outside. "What is it?" "We are being ambushed." "Now, the last type of human settlement is the red type. If you encounter this kind of settlement, you are pretty much dead," Colt warned the audience. "Whether it is a large city or a small village, you are dead." "Okay, maybe not really dead if you encounter a village, but you are still pretty screwed," Colt said. "Unlike orange type, who would not kill you if you do not go inside their territory, a red type will not only kill you, but sometimes also actively hunt slavers. Most red-type civilians come from a military background. Soldiers, mercenaries, and others. They came from different tribes, with the most famous ones being America tribe, Sign tribe, and the One tribe. There are a lot of human tribes that came to our world, and some even fight here. But no matter what, they all agree that slavery is immoral, and every slaver needs to be slain. Some tribes might be softer than the other, and will try to convince you instead, or they would use your body for an experiment, but most don't do either of that. How could the humans who are weaker than the felines defeat us, you might ask? The first reason is strength in numbers, and the second reason is that it's not only the humans. Count Porky lay on the ground. He wondered how everything had gone wrong. He watched as the barbarian began freeing his own slaves from the wagons. More than 100 abominations are now free, and all of his guards were dead. The barbarians were in their hundreds, and they weren't only humans. Several other races were present, and he was pretty sure he could see another lizard on the mix. Traitors! A human approached him, pointing his magic wand, which does not look like a magic wand at all, but it does magic, directly at him. "Huh! You bastards might have freed these abominations, but these slaves were meant for King Falos, the king of Lurep Kingdom. Once he knows you humans have stolen his slaves, you smooth skins wouldn't stand a chance." The human's eyes widened at the mention of King Falos, and then they laughed. "What are you filth laughing about, you insolent—" Bang! "My lord, I have brought terrible news." King Falos rose his eyebrows. "Speak," he commanded. The slaves that your majesty has bought have unfortunately been lost in travel. The king facepalmed. Great, more problems, he thought. I see. Tell Count Leroy to buy another batch. The messenger quickly bowed before leaving the chamber. As the messenger left, another person entered the chamber. Thankfully for King Falos, she didn't come bearing bad news. Good evening, your majesty. Cindy skips towards him. Evening, my dear. King Falos smiled at his daughter. So, how was your study today? He asked. Well, today Miss Neela is teaching me about math. King Falos listened to his daughter's story. It looks like her study is going well. Dad, where is Mummy? Cindy asked. Well, she is currently busy. She is currently in Eura. Cindy pouted upon hearing that. Mummy is always busy, she muttered. And King Falos agreed. Maybe he should tell her to calm down and take some rest. I understand, dear, but Mummy is doing her best, all right? King Falos assured her. Amina, her wife, was a human from the Morocco tribes. After the portal closed, she had been busy going around gathering books, music, and other artifacts from her tribes. King Falos was fine with her passion for finding artifacts of her homeworld and tribes, but he felt like she had been too obsessed with it, and she is quite a workaholic even at her job as a diplomat and a queen. At first he thought that was just how humans work, but a talk with other humans told him that working for 15 hours a day for 6 days a week was too excessive even by human standards. King Falos had heard about how a lot of artifacts from her tribes had been lost. Every time she returned to the castle, she looked very tired and pale, and her mood started to become more sour each day. Hopefully, with this surprise gift, her mood would be better, King Falos thought, looking down at the row of slaves gathered around in the yard. King Falos knew how much humanity hated slavery, so he bought thousands of slaves from the Theta continent to be freed. It was quite expensive. After that whole industrialization thing, and the humans' pressure, there weren't that many slaves left in the continent. There were still a couple of slaves on penal slavery, since the treaty with the humans did allow previous criminals to continue on their status, but most had either finished their sentence or freed early by humans. The king looked down on his yard again. Mama will be really happy, he mused, while stroking his daughter's head.